Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to our first webinar of the year. This is our second webinar in the series Researcher in Focus, and I'm very excited to introduce the two speakers that we have today. So, our first speaker is going to be Dr. Suresh Kumar, who is a scientist at the Wildlife Institute of India. He's been there for the last 30 years and is currently working as a senior scientist in the Department of Endangered Species Management. As a faculty member at the Institute, he is involved in undertaking research, teaching postgraduate and PhD students, teaching and training Indian Forest Service officers in the field of wildlife management, and providing advisory to the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change of the Government of India and state forest departments. His primary research areas has been on lesser known species and threatened fauna, their ecology and conservation. One of the key aspects of his ecological research is tracking fine scale movements and migration of a number of species that include barn swallows, flamingos, cranes, waterbirds, vultures, pied cuckoo, Amur falcon, seabirds, and sea turtles. His seafaring experiences also took him to Antarctica as part of the 29th Indian Scientific Expedition in 2009, where he conducted aerial surveys for marine mammals and birds. Our second speaker today is going to be Mr. Rajdeep Mitra. He was born in the foothills of the Himalayas, and his passion for avian ecology and research has shaped his journey as a field biologist and researcher. He holds a master's degree in environmental science and has spent the last 4 years working with the Wildlife Institute of India. At the Institute, he has contributed to diverse research projects across the country. His work has taken him from the remote Lakshadweep Islands, where he studies population and movement ecology of seabirds, to the serene vistas of Kashmir, where he's currently looking at the waterbirds of Wular Lake and tracking the movements of selected species. So, welcome, Rajdeep and Dr. Kumar. I request you to now please share your slides.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Let me share the screen.
Okay, your screen is now visible.
Okay. So thank you so much, Sabia, and everyone at the Indian Seabird Group for having given us this opportunity to present about the work that we are currently undertaking in the Lakshadweep Islands. And yes, so thank you for the for the introductions. You might have realized that I'm basically working on different birds. And yeah, so birds are something that's really close to me, and I do also sea turtle work. But what connects me with seabirds, and I mean with birds and sea turtles, is about their long distance movements. So they are amazing in terms of their abilities to move from one region to another, and that's really interesting. So uh, s- talking about this presentation today, it also reminds me of my time in Antarctica about nearly 15 years ago, and it was almost around this time when I was on a voyage, and from my vessel I would be looking at the albatrosses and other seabirds, storm petrels, and so generally these birds which for miles together they've been flying, and it always made me wonder how they're able to do that. So when we talk about seabirds today, the same questions, the same curiosity things that went on in my head even comes back to me today. So I would say that the study that we started off, is something that had hit my mind several years ago when I was watching seabirds out in the ocean. So coming to the presentation today, as you all know, 70% of the planet is ocean. So this is the blue planet. And birds are amazing in the fact that they've been able to colonize almost every part of the globe. and so is the case with seabirds. So uh, some of these species have been able to occur in almost in massive numbers, 800 million seabirds that we know currently, and they are found in all oceans of the world. Many of these species have circumglobal distributions, and some of them have distributions that range across the hemispheres. In the summer, they are there in the southern summer, they are there in the lower hemisphere or southern hemisphere, and in the rest of the year, they are up in the northern hemisphere. So, literally tracking the summer months, and also that tracking winds, and it's all energetics at the end of the day when it comes to moving long distance. So tracking food resources. So when you look at these birds in more in depth, it really amazes us as to how much they know, and more importantly, they also inform us as how well connected the planet is and how live the planet is. but all is not well with the seabirds. So, what many of you following seabirds would know that nearly there have been dramatic declines of these birds, these specialized group of birds. And as you can see in this graph, nearly 50% when you compare with other birds. There are many other birds that are also in the decline, but seabirds, massive decline. And the reason is overfishing, and a lot of these birds also get caught in what is known as long line, fishing hooks that are laid out in the open oceans for miles together. They're baited for fish, but unfortunately, some of these highly threatened seabirds, like the albatrosses, do take to these, picking up these food that is available, but they get entangled in those hooks, and a lot of them die. So, and to also to the extent that there's plastics in the ocean, and that's also seen in these birds. They're ending up consuming plastics. A lot of these stories that we know. So, nearly 314 seabirds that are known, 56% of these are in decline, and which includes 80%, which are generally considered as least concern. Least concern just surely because of the numbers and that they are widely distributed. But these birds are also on drastic declines in their numbers. So, moving on, next slide. So, coming to the seabird colonies in the Indian Ocean, okay, so we do have the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea and the large Indian Ocean just south of us. So, there are a number of nesting colonies across these areas, but here again, not all is well. So, of these hundreds of nesting colonies of seabirds, 46 of these are in the Western Indian Ocean that are well studied. And of these well studied, 14 has been lost, and about 8 have declined in number over the last century. So clearly, things are not well. And the story that I'm presenting to you is only about the western part of the Indian Ocean. The eastern part of the Indian Ocean, we know very little. And it is also that much of these nesting colonies, data deficient. No one really knows what's going on with seabirds in many of these areas. Okay. So, yes, so moving on. Uh, Today's talk is going to be primarily focusing on the Lakadai archipelago, which is the Lakshadweep Islands. But as you know, that this is along the Chagos, Maldives, and Lakadai Ridge, and we have a unique set of islands. And when if the mention of seabirds to anybody here in India, we are thinking about this one particular bird sanctuary that is located there in the Lakadai group. There are a few other important seabird colonies in the Maldives as well as in the Chagos archipelago, and many of the seabirds that are reported along the west coast of India, or for that matter, along the east coast of India, some of these birds are likely coming from these islands. So, uh, when it comes to the seabirds, all that we know is that okay, there are these oceanic islands where these birds are there, and we know that in the Lakshadweep there are these seabirds that are there. But except for a few studies, nothing per se in detail that we would ideally look for. A systematic a study detailing in depth about each of these birds is lacking, primarily because it's a very expensive proposition getting to these islands and remote. Logistically, quite a few challenges. These are all uninhabited islands. There is no drinking water. You can't stay there. You just need to go there and come back. And just simply as getting into those islands. But then, having said that, these if these islands are that remote, then the seabirds should generally be safe. But that's not the case. At least in when it comes to the Lakshadweep, or when it comes to the islands here, many of the islands where the birds had nested in the past are all now inhabited by people, and there is plantation there, and a regular, egg collection during the nesting period has also led to serious threats to these birds. So, given these premises, we were trying to attempt to understand this better, wanted to collect some baseline information which we can monitor from years from now. So, that was how this study had been planned. And the other interesting thing that I've personally been wanting to understand is that how are these seabirds using the Indian Ocean waters, or the Bay of Bengal, and the Arabian Sea. Like I mentioned earlier, these are all connected. We do have a number of resightings or recaptures of birds that have been tagged elsewhere and had possibly stranded and died, and so we know that they're coming in here. But we wanted to understand how these birds move in these waters, add to the story of what is already obtained from the southern Indian Ocean. So the northern Indian Ocean, particularly, and especially in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, there has been very little tracking effort, and so we wanted to get the islands that are known for seabird nesting in the Lakshadweep up in the global map of seabird monitoring and population monitoring and research. So that's how this particular study was initiated. And so I'll now request Rajdeep to tell you in detail about what we actually found, and some interesting insights and the stories about seabirds. But this is just a one season work that we did. This is last year that we could go to those islands and do this work. And yes, this is an ongoing study, and hopefully in the coming years we will collect more interesting information. So over to you, Rajdeep.
Thank you, sir. As you mentioned that in the Chagos Laccadive ridgeline, Lakshadweep archipelago is one of the very important seabird nesting sites. And as you also mentioned that there used to be multiple places where seabirds used to come and nest in good numbers, but habitat encroachment has primarily led to loss of four major seabird nesting sites in the Lakshadweep Islands. And currently, there are only two islands, one called Charebani in the northernmost region, where seabirds are coming to nest in small numbers. And the other is in Pitti Island, a small reef in the Lakshadweep Islands, where seabirds are coming to nest in good numbers. So today, I'll be giving you insights into the nesting seabird populations in Pitti Island, which is also known as Pakshi Pitti. Now, Pitti, as I mentioned, is this very small area, barely 4 hectare of a landmass. And Alcock in 1902 was the first person to report nesting from Pitti Island. However, Alan Octavian Hume in 1876 reported, nesting of seabirds all across the Lakshadweep Islands. Followed by them, there have been short-term surveys or studies been carried out in 1963, 94, 2007, 2018, to name a few. And all of these studies reveal one catastrophic thing: 95% population decline in the seabirds of Pitti Island. From 1963, where Matthew Ambedkar reported seeing around 20,000 seabirds, mostly terns, in 2018, there's only a few thousand left. Although some of the studies were guesstimates, we can say, because many of the studies were carried out from afar. People could not, or the researchers could not land into the island. So they were basically observations made from the boat or from the ship. But overall, the picture is quite clear. A 95% of population decline in one of the major nesting sites within the Indian region. And with these rising concerns, the Lakshadweep Forest Department reached out to the Wildlife Institute of India to assess the current population and to figure out the trends of the nesting seabirds, and also track the movements of a few select species, both of which I'll be giving you detailed descriptions later. Pitti, as you can see, is surrounded by a barrier reef, which makes it impossible for any vessel or any boat to particularly land on the island. And reaching near the waters of Pitti is a challenge altogether. I mean, it requires really calm oceanic conditions to reach near the island. And then getting into the island, you really have to swim 100 to 200 meters in really right oceanic conditions with a life jacket on, or with your snorkeling mask on. You have to get into the island and then start looking at the seabirds. So we did our study in from February to April, and on 6 times we could visit the island because of the logistical reasons, as I mentioned. On 3 occasions, we could not made it to the island, so we just had to focus our observations from a boat with a binocular or with a spotting scope. And the other 3 occasions, we managed to land on the island, as I'm showing here with the green arrow, from this small sandy beach area where you had to swim for 150 meters to get into the island. And upon reaching the island, we counted the nesting seabirds by walking along the periphery of the nesting colony, basically to do direct counts, figuring out how many number of individuals are basically in an incubating posture, so that we can actually count the number of birds that are nesting and the other birds which are not nesting but also present in the island. And our results show that Pitti Island is not only an important nesting site for seabirds, it is also a very important site for a number of seabird species which winter here and also use this island as a staging ground or a stopover site to move into their different or respective breeding sites. We recorded 8 different species of seabirds, and many of them were in non-breeding season, and some of them were in breeding season. To talk about the non-nesting seabirds, initially we found great crested tern, around a maximum of 300 individuals we recorded on the northern northeastern sandy beach. They were basically roosting in a mixed flock. This was then followed by the lesser crested tern. Again, 400 individuals maximum were observed in the same area. Followed by the bridle tern, a bird which is also reported to nest in that island, but during our field study, we did not see these individuals nesting. A maximum of 40 individuals are mostly seen on the rocky part or the rocky crevices on the southern side of the island. Then there were common terns, a common winter migrant in this region. They basically come from higher northern latitudes, spend their winter in the Indian Ocean basin in the coastal region and in and around the islands. A maximum of 70 birds we managed to find during our study. And then there is another very similar looking individual, the white chick tern, another winter migrant and an endemic to this part of the ocean. A maximum of 70 individuals we managed to record, again in that mixed flock with all these different species of terns. Interestingly, we also recorded a roseate tern, which is a first record from Lakshadweep. I mean, there has not been much seabird observations in Lakshadweep because of the remote regions. I'm not saying that they arrived here for the first time. They might be there throughout the history, but it's just that the observations were not that common. So 4 individuals we managed to find roosting with other terns. And now, if we talk about the population trend of the non-nesting seabirds, we can clearly see a trend. The lesser crested tern and the greater crested tern, their numbers peaked in March. As we know that these birds basically are very common winter birds in the coastal region, but their breeding grounds are in Red Sea, in Persian Gulf, in Maldives. So in March, we believe that a good number of birds actually congregated in and around Pitti before moving into their respective breeding region, which could be either Maldives or, as I mentioned, in Persian Gulf and sites like that. White chick tern and common tern are common winter migrants. Their number again peaked in March, and by April, their number started to drop down. We believe they were also moving then further move towards their breeding region. Brittle tern, their number kind of remained the same, for which we believe that these birds are likely to initiate nesting, but which likely happened during the later during the monsoonal months. Apart from that, we also cited the three tube-nosed birds from the Procellideiformis family: the Wilson storm petrel, flesh-footed shearwater, Persian shearwater. We also recorded for the first time from this region. Although, again, as I mentioned, this bird might be frequenting this region. Is just the lack of observations, and we recorded this bird as well. Interesting studies. And now, if we talk about the nesting seabirds, there are primarily two nesting species, the sooty tern and the brown noddy, which we observed nesting in PT Island. The sooty tern, a maximum of 1,000 individuals were documented, and these birds were mostly congregated in the central part of the island, whereas the brown noddy, another interesting looking seabird with a gray crown or a gray cap, very interesting looking, a maximum of 500 seabirds we observed, 500 brown noddies we observed in Pitti. Interestingly, their colonies were not intermixed. If you look at other nesting sites of these birds, Dry Tortuga National Park in Florida, there have been reports of intermixed colonies of, even in Seychelles, intermixed colonies of brown noddies and sooty terns. During our observation, we did not see them. Their nesting sites were clearly segregated into different regions, but on that same island in different areas. Now, if we look at the population trend, we can clearly see an exponential curve for the sooty terns as the season progressed from March to April. More and more number of sooty terns started to arrive in Pitti, and we believe that these populations are basically coming from different regions of the Indian Ocean. Chris Ferry, who has worked for 40 years on sooty terns in Seychelles and in this region in the Western Indian Ocean, he has tagged multiple sooty terns, and his tagged sooty terns do show a clear movement towards March and April towards the Lakshadweep region. So it could be that not only birds from Seychelles, but from all across the Indian Ocean region, Western Indian Ocean region, are coming to PT Island in March and April. If you look at the number of nests, we found in March 240 individuals were in an incubating posture. That's how we can say that, as these seabirds lay only one egg, so we can say that if one bird is incubating one particular in an incubating posture, so it's like incubating one particular egg. So around 240 birds, it started off in March, and then with April the numbers started to increase. And now, why we did end in April? Because from May onwards, as the monsoon begins, these islands become completely inaccessible. I mean, even hiring a boat or getting into the island becomes so challenging, and accessing Pitti becomes literally impossible. So there has been no data whatsoever on what is happening in the monsoon season. But as the graph shows, it is very likely that more and more number of birds are actually coming to nest in Pitti as the monsoon progresses. For a brown noddy, around 400 to 500 individuals were there throughout the season. And again, their nesting also started with March, and 170 birds were first laid eggs in March. And then April, the numbers started increasing. And these seabirds have basically 20 to 30 days incubation period. So as you can see, in April, the chicks started to hatch. 20 individuals first, and then in 14th of April, the numbers increased to 40. But we believe that this population remain, and it's not like much of the influx hasn't happened in brown noddy population. It is basically like a regional population that actually breeds here, and then post breeding it likely moves to different places. Now, as we know that seabirds face one of the primary challenges from mankind, egg harvesting being one of the primary reasons why seabird population has crashed in regions all across the world. And in In Lakshadweep Islands, basically in Pitti, the same thing has been reported from 1994 in 2007, and historically also there has been reports of egg harvesting from Pitti Island. So we wanted to look at it in also a different perspective, right? Is egg harvesting still an issue? Pandey 2007, he reports massive amount of egg harvesting from his questionnaire survey across the different islands. So we also wanted to look at whether egg harvesting is still an issue. Interestingly, we believe that no such egg harvesting is currently happening. During our questionnaire survey across different islands, the fishermen were very clear. The number of seabirds have plummeted down to such few numbers, and the eggs, so few of them, that it is not financially feasible for them to spend 10,000 rupees of diesel to reach Pitti and then collect only a few number of eggs which are there in March and April. This observation or this questionnaire survey results were further followed by our own observation. From March to April, the number of eggs only increased. We did not see a fall in numbers. So maybe during the time when we didn't manage to get into the island, if the fishermen had also been there, the numbers would have been a little. I'm not saying that it is absolutely impossible, but our survey, our questionnaire survey, and our data shows that it's likely that no such egg harvesting happening, which is a big thing for this region, as the numbers have already been so low that egg harvesting is likely not taking place in this region. But it's not only about egg harvesting. There are other reasons as well, which are other threats which the Pitti Island or the seabirds of Lakshadweep currently face. One of them is sea level rise. If you look at Right Otuga National Park, it is one of the major, huge nesting sites of sooty terns. Their numbers plummeted from 3 million to 350,000 in 8 decades because of loss of land, because of sea level rise. And the Ministry of Science and Technology predicts that a 0.4 millimeter per year to 0.9 millimeter per year sea level rise in the Lakshadweep region. And Lakshadweep and the Pitti Island is barely 2 meter tall. So it's not, as the way the things are progressing, the sea level rise and climate change, sea level rise could primarily be one of the reasons for which, the Pitti Island can be lost. During our field observation, we interestingly found out a very interesting natural history observation. There has been some natural predation that were taking place in Pitti Island. Ruddy turnstone, a common winter migrant all across the Indian region, also the same in Pitti Island. I observed a very interesting phenomenon. 3 to 4 ruddy turnstones would try to get the attention of a nesting sooty tern, whereas 2 to 3 of them would be at the back, and the moment the sooty tern lunges in front towards the ruddy turnstones which are in front of it, the turnstones which are at the back will immediately peck at the eggs, and as soon as the egg is broken, the sooty tern, laying only 1 egg per year per nesting season, it immediately leaves its nest and keeping the egg open for other predators like the ruddy turnstones to feast on them. So we observed around 19 eggs were lost due to natural predation during our observation. And ruddy turnstones are known egg predators of many species of terns all across the world. And so our study actually did manage to help one thing, that is to put Pitti Island into the map of the long-term ongoing efforts all across the Western Indian Ocean. There were few studies, few short surveys, reconnaissance surveys carried out in Pitti Island, but there have not been such long-term studies, for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, where you looked at the numbers, systematically count the numbers, figuring out what's the current trend and population. So by doing this population assessment, we managed to put Pitti Island map into the global ongoing seabird research into the Indian Ocean. So this concludes one part of the study. The next part is a very interesting one. It's the tracking part study of the seabirds. Here you can see a low-tech Sunbird satellite transmitter, which is barely 2.7 gram. We are putting it on the back of with the leg loop, trying to put it on the back of a sooty tern. We managed to tag two. We managed to tag literally two birds. One was a sooty tern. Another one was a brown noddy. These are solar powered transmitters, which basically which basically is giving location data through satellites. Whenever the satellite passes over it, it collects the data where the bird is, and then reverts back to us like where the bird is currently at. Unfortunately, after tagging, after 3 days only, we lost the sooty tern. And now the sooty terns are notorious to pluck the antennas out of the tags, which are reported to happen in Seychelles. But we're not sure what exactly had happened. It could be that the bird plucked the antenna out. But fortunately, the brown noddy, it continued to give us data for a really long time. And some interesting observations, which I'll take you through for the brown noddy's movement track. Initially, to be really honest, we initially thought the brown noddy might not actually move for 105 days. The bird was in and around Pitti. So when we are, as the seabirds have never been tagged from Indian region, we were not really sure whether the noddy moves or it stays around. So our tracking data only showed that, for 3 months, this bird was only hanging around in Pitti Island. And the moment we caught that bird, it was actually incubating an egg. And if you look at the incubation period, it is like 28 days, and the chick growing period is like 2 more months. So if we now combine everything together, it looks like the bird spent around more than 3 months hanging around the area of Pitti Island. And then on a fine day, on 19th August, the bird decided to move further. In one day, it crossed from Pitti Island in Lakshadweep to Panaji in Goa, where it spent 2 days. And then 5 more days it spent near Ratnagiri coast. Then it spent 2 days in and around Mumbai. But if you look at why this bird all of a sudden started moving towards the west coast, the answer is quite simple. It's the Malabar upwelling. So upwelling happens when the monsoonal winds move the oceanic water from the base or from the top of the ocean, and which follows a nutrient rich water from down below to move up. As the nutrient rich water moves up to the surface, it creates the upwelling, which then helps these birds, not only birds, different type of fishes to come and feed on the planktons, which in turn creates such a big sanctuary for other seabirds to come and forage. So I believe that it's not only the seabirds. Our group also, as Dr. Suresh mentioned, our group also tags sea turtles. They also showed the same thing. From August, September, that the sea turtles, which you also managed to tag from Pitti Island, from Lakshadweep, they also, sea turtles, move towards the Malabar upwelling. So this upwelling is also helping all sorts of marine mammals and also, seabirds. If you are familiar with the seabirding in and across Goa and Mangalore, you will also find in September, October is the time when maximum number of seabird sightings happen in the west coast of India. And the reason is quite simple. It's the Malabar upwelling. But then, as luck has it, cyclone Asna, it struck the Saurashtra coast and Gujarat in August, and the bird got blown inland with the cyclonic winds of Asna, and spent one day in Ukai Dam. Then it followed Narmada River, and we lost the bird on 30th August in Khalghat region. It was very exhausted, and it was then found out by a local person that it was there and in Khalghat region of Madhya Pradesh. And that's how we lost the individual. But if you look at the Malabar upwelling region, as I mentioned, this is, we believe, is one of the primary reasons for which birds from Lakshadweep is likely moving towards the western coast post-monsoon when the upwelling starts. Now, this is further supported by tracking studies and ring recoveries happening all across the Western Indian Ocean. Birds, lesser noddy, sooty tern, wedge-tail shearwater, tracked from different parts of the Western Indian Ocean, and ring recoveries of lesser crested tern from Persian Gulf has shown that the post-monsoon season, different seabirds congregate towards the Malabar upwelling region, the western coast of India. And interestingly, when the upwelling ends by November, another upwelling starts off in Maldives. And when the upwelling starts in Maldives, this is the time when seabirds start to breed. Your tropic birds, your frigate birds, these birds breed in good numbers in Maldives, and their breeding is also dependent on the upwelling that starts in Maldives in December. So we believe that it's likely that the seabird movement in the western coast of India, or for say the Western Indian Ocean, is actually being dictated by upwelling regions all across this region. To start off, the upwelling starts in August, September here in the western coast of India, which is then followed by the upwelling in Maldives. This again further is proven by satellite tracking study from Bird Island in Seychelles, where the sooty terns are known to first come in the west coast, and then they follow down and move further down towards the Maldives region, and then maybe go towards the Bay of Bengal. Different birds follow different regions, and this is how we believe the upwelling is one of the regions. Of course, the monsoonal winds also play a crucial role to make sure the birds, because they are basically saving energy, right? Energy saving is also a crucial part. So the energy saving also dictates their movement, and the upwelling, the rich food sources, that's all these birds care about during their post nesting movement. So that's kind of the whole story of our tracking part, and we will be carrying out further tracking next year. Of course, the year is always already there. We are in 2025. Again, in the breeding season, and the breeding again starts in February, March. We will be going again to Pitti Island, tag 3 more individuals, and probably this time we will not have any cyclones such as Asna or as such, and we'll be able to properly say what happens during the post nesting. Where do these birds go, whether they follow the same route as the birds from Bird Island in Seychelles. They go down to Maldives and move in different parts. That will be a really interesting thing to observe during this tracking window, which is coming shortly. With this, I would conclude here. A massive thanks to the Lakshadweep Forest Department, Sri Santosh Reddy, Sri Abdul Rahim, the local RFO, who was instrumental in making us reaching the particular island, Pitti Island, with the departmental board, the departmental staff. They have always been really helpful. And I would also thank our director, our dean, and my friends and family in Lakshadweep, and everybody who was also part of this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this fantastic talk to both of you. This has been so interesting. I'm still digesting everything. But to all of our viewers, if you have any questions, please post them on YouTube. I am monitoring the chat so I can read out your questions and they can be answered. But I can start off with a couple of questions. So I think one of the first questions I would want to ask is for monitoring. I suppose these are some technical questions that I might have because I'm also a seabird biologist. But have you considered aerial monitoring of the colonies when you can't get to the island by boat? Because drones have been used for monitoring a lot of seabirds. So I just want to know your insights
Yeah.
into maybe that is a method.
Yes, yes, we have used drones, but then again, there's one thing that we always considered, that there has been recent reports of drones being flown really close to seabird colonies and the seabirds
Mhm.
abandoning the nests. And this island, PT Island, the nesting population, as I mentioned, has 95% fallen down. So we did not try to jeopardize a population which is already facing so much struggle. We did use drones, flying it really high up to understand what number of birds. But the case, but the days when we managed to access the island, and the numbers are so small now that we could visually count the numbers. 1,400, maximum 400 birds we observed nesting, and a total number of 100 individuals which are present. And I believe as the season progressed, there could be more individuals that started laying eggs, which we unfortunately couldn't access because of the monsoon.
Mhm.
The other thing is also that it's all about the timing. If you're lucky enough, there's not much winds in those areas at that point of time, because the winds are also very steady. So flying up your drone, getting it back, Of course, there are some really tough drones that is available, but it
Mhm.
is a challenge. It is a challenge, and so you have to wait for the right wind conditions. So even on those occasions when we set sail, it's only about 25 kilometers from Kavrati, but when you start off, you really don't know what it is going to be there. Only when you really approach the island close by, you really know. I mean, you get to know what is the situation, whether we are in a position to land or not. Of course, there are times when the sea is very calm, it's quite predictable, and you're actually having to travel through the deep oceanic stretch, and it's not like something like you can take a small dinghy or a small boat and get there. You really need to have proper seaworthy boats to go. And so yes, so what we have always faced the challenge is that having the right kind of boat available to get to these places. So, and
Hmm.
when you do want to land in these islands, or when you do want to go there, land and then fly the drone, you still need to get these equipments all packaged into dry bags and moved. So
Hmm.
it is a challenge. It is an expedition of sorts. So that's something that is limiting us. So we have been trying to come up with different ways. And in fact, what we have now planned is to actually deploy time lapse cameras.
Hmm.
Okay, uh, fix it on the ground in select places, so where there's a vantage point and we get a full view of the heron. I mean the seabird colony at different angles, and then possibly get that. So, but with the hope that nobody comes and picks it up. Okay. Having said that, we don't see any egg harvest happening at this point of time. Uh, but maybe there are people curious enough to just go and wander around and come back. Uh, yeah, so that challenge is there, but then we'll try. So we are in the process of deploying those cameras right now. Um, and also that we need to have proper casing. It doesn't get blown away. So we've been learning on the job. We've been trying to work out different possibilities of how you can secure your equipment, and
Hmm.
cannot be just a flimsy attachment, a pole, and just tie it up or something like that. No,
Hmm.
we need to have something solid enough, but it is not so solid that how would you take it? You can't swim with it. You can't take it over there. Yeah.
Hmm.
So possibly maybe with the time lapse cameras, we should get some more interesting stories of what's happening with the populations. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that will surely be very interesting. I think my other question is, apart from getting to the island, what do you think is the most challenging part of putting your tag out on a bird?
Uh, well, the weight of the bird is seriously a major constraint. Okay.
Hmm.
So we have to, at this point of time, we are talking about the brown noddies and sooty terns. So wherein you can only deploy a 5 gram satellite transmitter, which is
Hmm.
hugely expensive. So it's almost to the tune of about 3.5 lakh rupees a unit. And just imagine my heart just sank when after 3 days there was no transmission. So the possibility of losing transmitters is very high.
Hmm.
And that is one of the serious challenge, but then we need to attempt it, we need to try, and that's how. So it's a pilot initiative of sorts. Of course, there have been people elsewhere who have been tagging these birds. They have also had a mixed bag. Some of the transmitters have worked fantastically well, some of the transmitters haven't worked well. The sooty tern is something that I think at this point of time I would not, rather we would not go back and tag again, because these birds are aggressive, and they can just keep pecking at the transmitter and just pluck it off. They can damage it. They can get it off. So I think in order for us to put up a good show, at least we will attempt to tag the brown noddies, which seem to be working for us.
Hmm.
And so yeah, so we possibly invest on the brown noddies. Uh, so at the end of the day, it's about how understanding these movements, and we'll have to possibly wait for some more years from the technological constraint. Okay, so there is miniaturization of tags. There are less expensive tags that's coming, but then they're constrained by the weight. So
Mm.
you have to wait for a few more years. I mean, some more years.
Okay. Um, and another technical question, maybe. But what are the advantages of gluing a tag over, more? I think I've mostly seen people taping the tags. So, what are sort of the advantages of gluing it over taping it?
Yeah, so we have done the harness method. Okay, so there's a Teflon harness, so it's just nothing but a backpack.
Mm-hmm.
So we have not stuck it, so it's a backpack. And there are certain cases where they do, stick it on, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't do it on seabirds, or you don't do it generally on other birds. So for
Yeah.
sticking it, you will have to shave off a certain stretch of bird, the feathers, and then you'll have to stick it on the skin, not on the feather, because the feathers will mold and it's going to
Yeah.
fall. And this is not a common practice for these birds. It's like for the penguins, they did try do that. Okay, but not for these birds. So
Mm.
we have generally followed methods that generally most other people have done. Okay, and this is what is normally done. And so yes, so when we are going in tagging birds for the first time, we wouldn't do something very different from what
Mm.
others have done. So I usually use backpack harness, okay,
Okay.
for other birds. But whereas in the seabirds, for these two birds, the very first time we did leg loop harness. So that is the attachment is using the legs. So the loops, the ribbon goes around the legs, and so the transmitter is positioned to the back of the lower end of the bird, not at the back. Okay. So if you're putting it as a backpack, then those harnesses go around the wing, and that's how it is secured there. So uh, I I I mean I think so. This is something that others have advised us. Okay, so we did write to other people, get their experiences, see what works well for them, and what is possibly now we kind of know what possibly will work for us. If I do still intend to go and tag a sooty tern, I would not do a leg loop. I'll go for the backpack.
Okay.
Okay, because even if it's going to turn around, try to remove the antenna, it's not going to be easy for the bird because it's positioned right at the top.
Mm.
Okay, whereas if it is going to be lower below, then it's like almost preening its tail and trying to rip it off. It can. So yes, so given that there is such a heavy investment, you also need to keep these things in mind. And yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that. I have a couple of more generic questions. What do you think should be done to involve more people in seabird research? Because there's so many young ecologists who would love to get involved, who do reach out to us on our platform, but we're not able to, or we are able to tell them what skills to develop. But how do you think we can involve more people in active research?
Nasdeep, you want to take it?
Yes. I think the first thing is the opportunities in India working on seabirds is not very common. As you are being a seabird biologist, you also know that much of the seabirds which we see are so far into the ocean that you need to take a boat, get a vessel, and get into the island, get into the deep ocean. And Lakshadweep also being one of those islands which are not easy to access. So getting into the Lakshadweep island, if you talk about from the Indian region, if you want to work on seabirds in India, it is important that for us being part of a research institution like the Wildlife Institute of India, it gives you that opportunity to write up a proposal, think about a research objective which you have in mind, and then put it through a scientist who is keen on working on seabirds, and then approach the ministry or gather funds, and then put it through an institution. That way it's easier for any young ecologist or any biologist who want to work on seabirds. It's easier that way. Independently, it's going to be a big challenge. As you know, the if you want to track the tags cost you 3.5 lakh rupees, right? For an individual, it's not easy to generate that much money. So it's better to go through probably an institution if you want to work here in India, and then try to generate the funds, write up a proposal, research objectives, and talk to scientists like Dr. Suresh and others, BNHS maybe, or other institutions who are working on seabirds.
Yeah, I don't want to sound discouraging, but there is very less funds available for seabird work. Okay, one of the reasons is that many of these species that we are dealing with are least concern species. Um, that's the way it is. Okay, so uh, I mean, it's not that if they are least concern that they should not be studied. In fact, I am particularly interested in studying species which are least concern because there are the interesting questions are there. There are a lot of interesting things to study about these birds. But when it comes to seabirds, it's very clear right at the start. It is it is a hugely expensive affair. So you could always visit. You could always go to any of these seabird nesting colonies, maybe make one visit, and come back. But then, if you want to seriously invest yourself into a serious research, then it would call for systematic study, and for systematic study you would need good amount of funds that you need to have, and the funds are primarily required for your mobility, for you to be able to hire a boat which is seaworthy. And it is not just you and a boatman in the boat, but you need a team, because these are uh, wilderness. It's wild. It's an adventure to get to Pity. So you need to have professional divers. When I was asked to jump into the sea, I mean, I would not want to with those waves, coming to you. So I had professional divers on board who would take me to get into the island. So it's adventurous and all that, but it all comes with a cost. And the second thing, which is again quite a challenge, is the weather. The weather is never on your side. It is. It has its own mind. So you have all your plans, you have everything set, you have invested your money, you get there. I'm just giving the example of Pity, but in many other places, I mean, of course, there are many other places in the world where things are much easier. You just need to be there, and like the Bird Island and a few other places in the Seychelles. Yeah. So, but here in India, this has been one of the reasons. This is why people have not. I mean, you don't find long-term research that has happened here in the systematic way. Okay, I don't mean to discredit anybody who has done the work there, but it's all entirely exclusively dependent on funds, and very discouraging. Okay, so but I don't intend to discourage anyone from taking this up as a challenge, but the fact is that this is what governs everything. But if they want to do seabird study elsewhere, there's some fantastic people who are doing a great amount of work
Sorry.
in the islands in the southern Indian Ocean, or in America or in Australia, where students who are young people, or just about anybody interested in join in taking up this work, should go and work with them or intern with them, and they're welcome to intern with us. But as long as we have the project, and Lakshadweep again requires permits, so it's a very lengthy process. It's Everything is regulated.
Okay. And then I have a last question. What skills are needed to become a seabird researcher? If you could just, for the young ecologists out there.
Serious birding. Need to be a serious birder, need to be extremely passionate about birds, and you need to have a good pair of binoculars, and be able to meticulously take notes of each and every the character of the birds that you're observing, especially that many of these birds during the wintering season, they are in their non-breeding plumage. They don't look they look very different from what they ideally are during the breeding season. So Rajdeep was very, very good at it. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying this just because he's sitting there, but He was very good at it. So he did have a good pair of, good camera with a zoom lens, and so he could take pictures and recheck and refigure and all of this. So it is not difficult, but yes, you can get bored sometimes when you're
Hmm.
out in the ocean. You don't see birds for long, and then suddenly you will see one bird. So I think for being a seabird researcher, it's a test of your endurance, how much you're able to put up with, and your ability to identify them correctly. They just give you a snapshot. They're just flying by. It's not always that you're seeing these birds sitting on a turtle shell or on something flotsam, or on a dry log of wood or something like that. No. So you're invariably seeing them fly, and they're flying off very fast. So your ability to track down, figure down to what could that be, and keeping yourself entertained by trying to be able to identify through a very investigative approach, is what would definitely is required to make a seabird researcher.
I would also like to add one more thing. If you have seasickness, better try to figure out a way to deal with this. Thankfully, I didn't have, but there were multiple people who I was taking along with me in many occasions, and they had seasickness. So not even for a minute they could manage to put their head, high up to look at the birds through the binoculars, because they were vomiting all throughout the voyage. So if you are a young ecologist or a biologist who want to work on seabirds, hopefully you don't have seasickness. If you have it, learn how to deal with it. So that's one
Yeah, words of
way.
encouragement. I have seasickness and I take tablets on a boat and then I'm okay.
Yes, yes, yes. Always better to carry some avomin or some Drotin, something like that, whenever you are going out. Not even if for looking out for seabirds in the ocean. That's
Yeah.
very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you really for participating in this webinar, and for all this amazing information on Indian seabirds. Hopefully, we can have you back next year after you've done another years of tracking with more insights.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, just before we just one closing remark that I would like to say, we just talked about some of the experiences that the way we look at things. Okay? It is not necessary that the way we look at it is the way it generally works. If someone is really headstrong about doing this, it's being about being able to pursue this. There are several ways. There are several ways that you can do this work. Okay, but you need to have clarity. You need to have the ability to endure and pursue. And possibly you're one of those people who's doing that. You already know the logistics and the issues that are there. So yeah, so it's. I'm saying this again because I thought that maybe I sounded too discouraging to start with. you know if I was someone thinking like this, I would never even head there. Okay, of course I'm interested in going and seeing Pity, but why invest yourself into ask yourself a lot of trouble by investing yourself into getting a full-fledged study going on? So there are ways, there are possibilities, and often I do find, as a senior scientist here at WI, uh, don't get those students who really want to push themselves and go out and do this kind of work. Rajdeep was doing. So so yeah, it is possible. It is not that it's not possible. And believe in documenting information in a much more methodical, systematic, simple natural history observations. We don't have those baselines, and that is seriously required. Okay. Yeah.
okay. Oh, thank you so much. Right, I will now remove you from the live stream. Thank you for
Okay.
joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar. This video will be available on YouTube to view whenever you want to. And we'll post information about our next webinar soon, hopefully. Thank you.